average person just wants their government to function and allow them to do well and their kids to do better. It's not rocket science.
I think it boils down in the most simplistic of terms to really just listening to people. There continues to be significant and substantial unease in our country.
Some of these moderate Democrats reading the writing on the wall, progressives pushing the party's cradle-to-grave social safety net through the House. Well, Christie is the former Republican governor of New Jersey, author of a brand new book called Republican Rescue. He's with us in studio now, and good morning to you. Congratulations on the book. Why did you write it?
I wrote it because the times are so desperate for the country that we need a viable, active two-party system with a Republican Party that can win. And in 2018 and 2020, we lost the House, the Senate, and the White House within 2 years. The only other time that's happened to the Republican Party in our history was Herbert Hoover from 1930 to 1932. And then we only won the White House twice in the next 36 years. We can't afford that. So the book is about saying no more looking backwards. Let's look forwards. Let's lay out an agenda for 2022 that can win. And let's get back to winning again. Because we win, we can govern, and we can stop some of the crazy stuff that we see happen in Washington.
Was the Glenn Youngkin race in Virginia, to you, a model for possible Republican wins across the country? No better year to run as a Republican than 2022.
No, and it was, Dana. Look, the Youngkin race was executed very well. He talked about Virginia issues. He said, let's eliminate the grocery tax. Great issue. Let's put parents back in charge of their children's education. Great issue. And let's grow jobs in Virginia. And that's all he relentlessly spoke about. And Terry McAuliffe, his opponent, ran on the past, ran a bunch of Trump ads and all the rest that he thought was going to demonize Glenn Youngkin. But people in Virginia looked at him and said, he doesn't look like Donald Trump to me. He looks like Glenn Youngkin. We have to run races all across the country like that. People need to be authentic, genuine, and talk about the issues that voters care about, not the grievance politics and the vendetta politics of the past. That's not going to win us elections.
It seems, for some Democrats on the Hill, maybe a lot of them, for fact, think that they have not done enough with their majority, and that's the reason why they lost, and therefore they're pushing forth more spending. What is the read in New Jersey and in Virginia among independents and Republicans on that?
Well, independents went big for Jack Ciattarelli, even though he lost the governor's race by 2.5 points. Independents went very big for him. And what you're seeing across the country among independents, I think, is that Joe Biden ran as a centrist uniter. That's what he was going to do. And now he's governing as someone left of FDR. And they feel like they've got buyer's remorse. They're like, that's not what we voted for. He lied to us. He lied to us when he said he was going to be a centrist and a unifier. And so I think what they're saying on the Hill, I want them to go ahead, keep trying to push this stuff. The more they push it, the bigger the losses will be in November, in my mind. And we need to, as a Republican Party, though, to not be making the same mistake about talking about the wrong things. We need to be talking about the future. We need to be talking about crime, jobs, education, inflation, and what our prescriptions are for all that.
So Frederick DeBoer in the New York Times said that Democratic socialists need to take a hard look in the mirror, that it's time for young socialists and progressive Democrats to recognize that our beliefs just might not be popular enough to win elections consistently. It does us no favors to pretend otherwise. So the Democrats can't say that they weren't warned, right? You could pick up any newspaper, every liberal-leaning pundit, and saying, whoa, wait a minute, guys. But at the White House, they're not saying that.
No, because
they're pushing even harder. I think that's so strange.
Well, I think it's because they hear the clock ticking, Dana, on two different things. One, on their majorities in Congress, and they feel like if we don't do it now, we're never going to get a chance to do it. And two, they hear the clock ticking on Joe Biden's presidency. There is no chance that this guy is anything but a one-term president. He was always seen as a transitional figure. And all this malarkey that he's putting out there that he's going to run in 2024, I'd be willing to bet every dollar I have in my pocket.
Even the Democrats don't believe that, right?
No, and so that's why you're seeing desperation.
What is your thinking about their philosophy, they being Democrats in a case like this, where 11 years ago they passed Obamacare, and as we've said many times, nobody predicted they'd lose 63 seats in the House. Right? They thought they'd take a beating, but not 63.
Right.
But it was more important to get the law into the books. And some of these programs right now are considered to be the same way. Do you believe that is the play among Nancy Pelosi and others, but maybe not the moderates within the party?
No, I think that's exactly the play, Bill. I think you have it read perfectly. Because here's what happens in our country, and Dana knows this from her time in the White House. When you give people something, it's hard to take it back. You know, so Obamacare was given, and they lost 63 seats, but Obamacare's still here. Even when we had majorities, we didn't take it away.
It took a few turns for them to get the majority back, and they were willing to bite the bullet on that. And you're saying that Pelosi and others are willing to do the same.
Do it while we got it.
And it continues to grow, because in the bill that they're just trying to pass, there's even more money for Obamacare subsidies. So that's
Exactly right.
that's that idea. I wanted to ask you also just one other thing about New Jersey, because it was so close that Jack Ciattarelli could have won, but there wasn't a lot of attention on the race. There wasn't a lot of money for the race, and the polling was wrong. And the pollster from Monmouth, who did that big poll that really dampened everything for the Jack Ciattarelli campaign, came out afterwards and said, "Oh, whoops, I really screwed up." Is that common in New Jersey, and do you think it is replicated across the country?
Yes to both. Look, let me be clear. Patrick Murray is a Democratic hack operative who is disguising himself as a college professor at a liberal university, and his polls...
So our audience knows he's at Monmouth University.
Yep.
Which is considered what, the poll in New Jersey, correct?
Well, by some people.
I think he had the race at 10 points.
11.
11 points right up until election.
11 the Wednesday before the election. It wound up being a 2.5-point race. And he said afterwards, Trump voters won't speak to me. That's why my poll was wrong. Well, how about telling us that when you put the poll out that says it's 11 points, but I didn't speak to Trump voters?
Right.
Well, if you were honest with it, it wouldn't have dampened. And I will tell you, if you put Jack Ciattarelli in the air, he would tell you it dampened his fundraising in the last 6 days, and it dampened enthusiasm among some voters who thought the race was over.
Could certainly affect
And I think it's being done in a partisan way. And no doubt in my mind, I had to deal with the partisan Monmouth poll for all 8 years I was governor.
Come back to the book as we conclude this. What do we learn about your relationship with Donald Trump in the book?
What we learn is that we've been friends for 20 years, and good friends tell people the truth. And I told Donald Trump the truth on election night and after election night, that the election was lost, and you cannot say something is stolen unless you have the evidence to prove it. And that's the prosecutor in me, but you can't bring an indictment if you don't have the evidence. And he has never had the evidence for that. And when he talks about all this stuff and is talking about grievances and vendettas that he wants to execute from the past, it drags down our ability to be able to combat what the real problem is here, which is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and these liberal policies they're trying to put into effect. I want Republican on Republican violence to stop. I want us to stand up against what the Democrats are trying to do, because they passed this bill. It's going to be nearly impossible for us to reverse it, no matter what happens. And so we need to be focused on the future, not the past. And he's my friend. I was the first one to endorse him. Have you talked to him since the
book came out?
Not since the book came out, no.
Is he part of the future?
He can be if he wants to be, but he's got to talk about the future. If all you want to do is talk about 2020 and not present evidence to back it up, which he hasn't done now for a year, well, then you can't be part of the future. But his ideas, many of his ideas as president, were very good. I supported him. I was the first one to endorse him. First elected official to endorse him in 2016 when I got out of the race. I chaired his transition. I played Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton in debate prep. But good friends like that, Bill, have to tell people the truth. And the truth is we need to move forward and come together as Republicans to stop Joe Biden and the liberals.
You spoke to him last when?
Right around Christmas last year.
Wow, it's been a year.
Almost.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the book. I read it. It's very, very good.
Thank you.
Good storyteller.
Well, thank you, Dana.
Turner. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Great to have you.
Bill, great to see you too.